Yo, what's going on, guys? CultofMush back at it, and in this video, we're going to be talking about Dishonored 2. The system requirements have just come out, and as you guys might know, this is one of my most anticipated games of the year. I was a big fan of the first Dishonored game. I thought Arcane Studios did a great job with that game, really put the power in the player's hand. I know that's kind of like a cliche statement, but whenever I play a video game, I just want to feel empowered, and that's really what Dishonored does. Dishonored 2 looks to be a lot more of the same comparatively to the first game. You do have two different characters to play as, and it looks like Arcane Studios have just amplified a lot of the mechanics that were in the first game. Nonetheless, very excited for the game, and the system requirements have just been released, so let's go over them. For minimum CPU requirements, you're looking at an Intel Core i5-2400 or an AMD FX-8320. That's pretty high-end for minimum requirements. Whenever a game has an i5 listed as minimum, you know that it's going to be a more intensive game, but Dishonored 2, it doesn't look like it's a game that looks that visually impressive, so who knows, hopefully those of you with an i3 are going to be able to get by, but with the minimum requirements being an i5, I don't know. You're probably going to be fine if you have a newer i3, but if you have, say, a Sandy Bridge i3, I think then you might be in trouble. And the FX-8320 as minimum is also kind of higher end. I know that's not like the best CPU in the world, but it is pretty decent. For recommended CPU requirement, you're looking at an Intel Core i7-4770 or an AMD FX-8350. Now, obviously, the 4770 is far ahead of the FX-8350 in performance and price, mind you, but you see this a lot with games recommending an i7 along with something like the 8350 because it's like the only thing comparable. I'm sure if you have an overclocked i5 or just a newer i5, say like a 6500, you're gonna be perfectly fine even when games recommend like an i7-4770. In my personal experience, I've never found that having an i5 hampered my experience too much. Moving on to RAM requirement, you're looking at 8GB of RAM for minimum, 16GB of RAM as recommended. That's become more and more common with a lot of the newer games these days. And really, if you've built a PC in the last 3 or 4 years, you probably have 8GB of RAM, and if not, that's a very, very cheap upgrade to make, so 8GB of RAM, nothing too surprising. Recommended RAM being 16GB, yeah, that is pretty high. But once again, whenever games do recommend 16GB of RAM, just like when they recommend an i7-4770, it's not crucially impactful to your performance, at least in my experiences. Once again, I still am rocking 8GB of RAM. That's an upgrade I really should be making soon, but nonetheless, 8GB of RAM is minimum, 16GB of RAM as recommended, not too surprising. GPU requirements is a little bit weird. For minimum GPU requirement on the NVIDIA side, you're looking at an NVIDIA GTX 662GB. I've been seeing this listed a lot as minimum requirement. I have no idea why developers opt to mention the 660 over something more recent. You could just say something like the 950 or something like that, even the 1050 Ti, but no, they just want to stick to 660. Okay, so the 660 is the minimum requirement on the NVIDIA side, and then the minimum AMD requirement GPU is an AMD Radeon HD 7970. That's a 3GB video card, the 660 is a 2GB video card, and the 7970 is far more powerful than the 660. So I don't know what's up with that. That's been an issue I've been seeing with a lot of games, particularly in the minimum requirements, where the NVIDIA GPU will suggest one thing and then the AMD GPU suggests a completely different thing. And you'll notice with the recommended GPU requirement, it's much more normal with the GTX 1060 6GB model being recommended, alongside an AMD Radeon RX 480 8GB. The funny thing here is that the 1060 is actually a better GPU than the RX 480, but on the minimum GPU side, the Radeon HD 7970 is a better GPU than the 660, so I don't really know what's going on there. Very weird. A lot of the times when I notice that the NVIDIA GPU is far lower than the AMD GPU for minimum requirement, that might suggest, okay, this game might run better on NVIDIA GPUs, but this isn't the case here, since on the recommended side, you've got a NVIDIA GPU that's being recommended that's more powerful than the AMD GPU. If you guys are following with what I'm saying, you understand. Pretty confusing. I don't know, sometimes stuff like this happens with the system requirements and we never get any sort of clarification from Bethesda, so I don't expect any different here. Finally, for hard drive requirement, you're looking at 60GB. That is a lot of space for a game like this. Honestly, I wasn't expecting Dishonored 2 to be one of the north of 50GB games because, you know, it is more of a linear experience. But I guess these days, you know, these 50, 60GB games are going to be far more normal. Especially with this generation, I've noticed that 40GB for a new release, that's kind of small in comparison to every other new release. So 60GB really isn't that crazy. Obviously, there also might be DLC that comes down the line, so you're gonna need extra space for that as well. Also, the post over at Bethesda's official website goes over a lot of the settings that are going to be available, but there's a lot to pick from. You've got texture details, model details, environmental details, anti-aliasing, rat shadows, bloodfly shadows, water quality, shadow quality, view distance, resolution, monitor selection, and field of vision. And for hardware NVIDIA specifics, you've got HBAO Plus and TXAA. So hopefully this game turns out well on PC. If memory serves me correctly, the first Dishonored game was very good on PC, so I expect the same with Dishonored 2. Let me know what you guys think of Dishonored 2 in the comment section down below. It's a game that I personally am very excited for, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people are really clamoring to play this game. I don't know why that is. It has been a long time since the first Dishonored game was released. Maybe people have forgotten about it. It's been like 4 years. So who knows, but let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.